Welcome to US Tzu Chi 360. I'm Neil Sokont, and I'm really fortunate to be your host today and to be here in this amazing place where I had to hike about 5 hours to get here. We are 2,500 meters high, and I'm standing between Spain, which is behind me, behind the mountain, France, where I'm standing right now, and Andorra. So we are in between three countries, and this used to be a glacier right here a couple of centuries ago. And now, as you can see, there is not much ice left. Actually, in the Pyrenees, which is the mountains where I'm standing, there is not much glaciers left, and that's because of climate change. So this episode is going to be about climate change, and we're going to meet different individuals who are either observing or fighting against climate change because their daily lives and their works are affected by climate change. So right now I'm supposed to meet with Bernard, who is French. He's an entomologist, and he's studying little animals, and those little animals say a lot about climate change. So let's go meet him.
My name is Bernard Chaubet, and I work for the National Institute of Agronomic Research. I have been an entomologist almost since I was born. My interest for insects probably started when I was 10 years old or so. By then, I spent a lot of time looking for butterflies and had a passion for insects, their biology, behaviors. But I always wanted to research insects in a way that could teach me something about our environment. Climate change is not necessarily a brutal change. There are really cold peaks, then really warm peaks. But what we need to focus on is the global issue. So far, scientists agree. To say that globally the data shows that there is a global warming. But it is hard for many people to see it in everyday life, and that is why people doubt it.
C'est vraiment un animal vraiment suivi, je pense, par pas mal de gens, en lien avec le changement climatique.
I have observed the decline of certain species in this environment that I know really well here in these mountains. Some butterflies that I used to study when I was young have completely disappeared. The temperatures at this altitude never used to be this high for this long, and some species can't survive that. Here in this mountain, there were two different populations of a butterfly called Parnassius Apollo, or mountain Apollo. At least from this valley, they totally disappeared. And climate change, specifically warming, caused it. Entomology is a sport that you practice directly, finding insects, catching them, identifying and studying them. Sometimes we also have to set up traps in remote locations.
On pose des pièges.
Insects, you can find them almost year-round. Of course, they are much more numerous in spring and summer. Sometimes you can find them in the winter, but it's more difficult. This high in the mountains, it's not normal to find insects at this time of year, especially when it snows. Most of the insects are already sleeping. So my primary goal this time was to retrieve the content of the trap to be able to continue to study the insects.
A posteriori, identifier les espèces qui étaient tombées dedans. Alors, ce qu'il y a, le principe de la tente cornée.
This trap here is a tent in the shape of a cone.
Par le cornet ici.
So when the insect comes here in the opening, it gets attracted by the light, then goes in that box and falls into this container to be conserved.
Pour être conservé.
People are always sensitive about butterflies. Trap a butterfly to study it. No one likes that. For mammals, it's easy to study them from a distance. For insects, unfortunately, it's impossible. I don't like to do it, but as scientists, we have no choice.
C'est pas par plaisir que je tue des insectes. Ce que je peux tuer moi comme insecte, c'est dérisoire.
But actually, every time you drive a car without realizing it, you are killing trillions of insects. Their populations are enormous, and what can be truly dangerous for one population is when their environment changes or when they face changes in climate.
Un insecte, c'est plus la modification de l'environnement, voire les changements climatiques.
So, I would like to be optimistic,
Et pas uniquement dans ce domaine.
but when I look at this world, it's hard for me to be optimistic.
Autour de soi, j'ai du mal à l'être. L'entomologie, c'est énorme.
Fortunately, entomology is a task that never ends. I could spend several lifetimes. I would still have more to learn from studying insects.
Tout apprendre.
Welcome back. So now, from the really small animals, the little insect we saw with Bernard, we're going to go to see bigger animals and to meet with the shepherd of this village, Goulier. His name is Roland, and he has been keeping this special kind of sheep that only exists here in this mountain. He's been keeping it not for the meat, but only to keep the species going. So he has about 200 sheep, and he has been observing, and him and his father before him, climate change here in this area. So let's go meet him.
Everything is completely different and starting to affect the sheep in a bad way. Me, I can't do my work the way my father used to. Right now it's 20 degrees Celsius. We've never seen anything like that. 20 or 25 degrees in late October, early November. 15 years ago, that would never happen. In a job like mine, we live with the seasons. We are on the front line for climate change, and we feel it, really. I have 200 sheep, females and males, breeders to keep the rare kind of sheep alive. Of course, we can sell the wool because we need to shave them every year. But I'm really here to maintain a flock, year after year. You have to know them really well to be able to do it. It requires a lot. When you do, you can find true happiness and live honestly and respectfully in the mountains. That's in a nutshell. My father used to do it before me, but during his lifetime it was already different. Within 20 years the work changed because of the climate. Seasons are completely disorganized. Temperatures during the spring and fall changed drastically. This breed of sheep is accustomed to a certain weather. About 20 degrees in the wintertime, for them it's terrible, because they're supposed to live with the normal seasons. That's how they've been living for hundreds of years. Spring is way longer now. Summer started July 20th this year. You usually have to start cutting the grass to make hay reserves for the sheep in early July. This year, it was really late, and the year before that it was the same. 2 years ago, we almost couldn't save any hay. These are things that never happened 20 years ago. How's it supposed to be? Well, first you have the spring. Nature gets all green. That's when I open the doors of the barn and they can start to enjoy the fresh grass. Slowly it gets warmer and I have them go up to the mountains. That's when the mountain summer pasture starts. They can stay at really high altitudes, and during that time we can start preparing hay, reserves for the winter. During the fall the flocks start to come back, and that's when the females give birth to the lambs. And because they're young and vulnerable, we slowly put them back into the barn.
Tout ce qui va mettre bas, les petits agneaux, bon, les mères.
Then winter comes, so the entire flock has to go back in the barn. That's when they use the hay we were supposed to collect during the summer in order to feed the little lambs. We need to feed their mothers who can have milk for the babies. And then the spring comes again and we start the cycle over again. That was before everything changed. Being in the mountains, we live with wild animals. For them, it's the same. Deers are getting hungry all year round. Wild boars come down to the barn because they don't have anything to eat in the forest. Trees and plants are not blossoming on time, so there's nothing for them to eat in the wild. Their behavior has totally changed. For the first time, I found dead animals in the woods. Many dead because of hunger. We've never seen that in the past. If the cycle doesn't come back to normal, I don't know what the future will be like. I just pray for the next spring to be green so they can have something to eat. I have to be optimistic. My life depends on theirs.
So I'm back here, but this time not in the mountain. I'm still in the cold, but not in the mountain. I'm in the Loire Valley. There is the Loire River behind me. And I'm here to meet with Jean, who has a boat. He takes tourists on a boat on the Loire River. And he has been observing as well climate change here. But here, climate change is perceived completely differently. And to give you an example, here I have the floods, the years of the different floods. The water level came up here in 1846, up here in 1866, and up here in 1856. So you see, it's about 7-8 meters above the level of the Loire when it's normal, like today. So Jean is going to talk a little more about the Loire and how it's going these days, and if he sees a real change in climate here.
On ne peut pas vivre sans nature, c'est pas possible. C'est un vrai besoin à l'intérieur des gens, quoi. Quand on en est coupé, on devient fou.
People are in need of natural elements because it's missing in their daily lives. My job is to help them come back to nature, educate them. They are not the ones who are causing global warming. They just don't know what they are doing to the environment. Scientists noticed that the water is warmer than it used to be. Now, some tropical animals are able to breathe in this water. Everything changes, but life adapts. It's like a permanent evolution. Every being, animals, plants, if they get the chance, they fight to reproduce, invade more space, develop, adapt. Every year is different. With my experience here, within 15 or 20 years, I have seen a lot of changes. So many changes that it is impossible to make any conclusion on climate change. There is not one main effect. Things are changing, but it remains impossible to predict the future. Water levels are changing. Temperatures are changing. It's extreme. Either it's really hot, dry, vegetation is burnt, we have a drought. Or either it's like now with water, an enormous quantity of water, and living things need to adapt to these extreme changes.
Ce qui est extraordinaire, c'est qu'elle est restée haute, parce que souvent, tu as des montées d'eau, etc. Là, elle est... Tous ces petits saules là, eh bien, avec l'inertie du bateau qui fait 2 tonnes, tu lances un peu ton bateau et tu es comme dans un champ de blé, ça te les couche sur ton passage. Et tu passes comme ça à travers. On rentre là-dedans.
In living memory, people have never seen a real flood.
Voilà. Donc là, comme l'homme...
Humans easily forgot their bad history.
After 2 or 3 generations, people have forgotten. Now, because of climate change, it's coming back. We have a barrier on both sides of the Loire to protect the valley behind it. The valley is inhabited, but today we have no idea how the barriers would handle a big water rise like the one we had in the 19th century. We don't know if they can handle that. If the water rose, the only response would be to evacuate people. Now we can anticipate it. We have at least 3 or 4 days to anticipate a flood. 2 centuries ago, people were warned by people riding horses, going down to town saying that the water was coming. And that time, they had to react really fast. Now we are more relaxed. However, now people have built their houses right behind the water wall. They are in the middle of the flood zone, and if a disaster was to happen, they would have to be evacuated as quickly as possible. And for their belongings, well, too bad for those. In people's minds, a flood in the Loire River, nobody believes it'll happen. I am the only one who believes it will. That's why I have got boats, because I'm waiting for the water to rise. It's my biggest wish to be able to save all the people. Well, maybe not all of them, but save people, animals, dogs, anything. That would be extraordinary. Sometimes I think all these creatures here, they must really want to be here. It became difficult. It's tough now. For someone just passing by, he must think it's pretty. He sees flowers, nature, it looks soft. But no. Life is hard here. Life is hard.
I am now in Warsaw, Poland, for the United Nations Conference on Climate Change, which is hosted right behind me at the National Stadium here in Warsaw. So first off, let's go see what happened during these 2 weeks of negotiations here.
Climate change is really difficult to see in the frozen streets of Warsaw, the capital of Poland. Yet the country appears to be one of Europe's worst countries for greenhouse gas emissions. On November 11, 2013, the 19th Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change began in Warsaw's National Stadium. Global negotiators from 195 member nations met, with the hope of working towards an international and legally binding treaty. This would curb rising greenhouse gas emissions in order to limit the global average temperature increase of 2 degrees by the end of the century. The agreement is slated to be signed in Paris in 2015, but only a week before and 6,000 miles away, Super Typhoon Haiyan struck the Philippines. It was an unprecedented climate change-related event that would completely change the rollout of the negotiations.
My name is Tetet Lauron and I come from the Philippines. We appreciate all the expressions of sympathy from all over the world. But we do not need sympathy. What we need at the moment and what the world's people need at the moment is solidarity.
In these climate negotiations, our head of delegation has been so brave to challenge the world leaders gathered here to come up with a meaningful solution, concrete, decisive steps towards climate action. But unfortunately now, 2 weeks into the negotiations, what we're still seeing and hearing are still more talks. It's all talk. For us, enough of the talk. No, let's do something.
The fact that there are more and stronger extreme events is a fact, and science is telling us this, so we should not be surprised to see more and more of this. And this tragedy in the Philippines, it's terrible for what has happened, but it's also a big reminder to all of us of the need of urgency.
We've been having storms, we've been having flooding in our country, but the intensity, the frequency, and the gravity of the damage that that these typhoons are causing to our country and our people, these are not normal.
Because of the scientific difficulties to identify with precision whether or not natural disasters really are caused by climate change, it didn't allow the Philippines any hope for rapid recovery after Super Typhoon Haiyan.
We would like to light a candle for climate justice.
The Filipino delegation, along with many supporters, asked for climate justice, denouncing many countries who considered themselves above international law when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions.
Climate justice now for all.
On UN's Gender Day, a delegation of women from countries around the world wanted to express their support for the Philippines and make an impact on the COP's decision makers. The UN's Conference on Climate Change Executive Secretary Cristiana Figueres made an appearance while many had high expectations.
By doing the Gender Day, we make a support to pay a respect for those women who lost their life for Typhoon Haiyan.
Let's bring the care and love for all. Thank you.
We felt solidarity among the people, among the women in that action. And I think if we could only see a little bit of that from the world leaders here at this official meeting, that would really make a big change in the world.
The Philippines have been seriously touched by this, and we are very close to them, but they are also indicating that other governments, together with them, for this type of situation, we need more concrete action, and soon.
At the end of the day, it's about people caring about each other, showing love for each other, and really committing to working together.
The world is changing so much. The climate also creates a lot of challenge for us. When we're facing so many challenges, we have to come back to our own hearts. Then we can create the opportunity for open dialogue, for communication, and to make it a better tomorrow.
For the scientists, however, that better tomorrow will take time to come. Even if everyone agrees on the sense of urgency, the methods and the possible agreements that will emerge are not yet clear nor imminent.
We are absolutely running out of time, and at the same time there is hope that if we act, that then we can make it.
Even we have a Kyoto Protocol before, but the CO2 emissions still increase a lot. In the future, we should do more because the pressure is going on and on. The temperature increase very quickly.
Countries are implementing quite a large range of policies, but in total, this is not sufficient to keep climate change in safe levels. So what we need to see is a significant shift in policies. More countries need to do more. We see it possible in China, we see it possible in the US, we see it possible in Brazil, for example, that countries are taking action. But the overall trend, taking them all together, is not yet sufficient.
Now we have to make this turnaround in the next couple of years.
Actually, the COP19 is just the beginning. Our final decision will be 2 years later.
This international process alone cannot solve the problem. We need more activities from the outside, more activities by cities, by companies, by regions, by individuals to really make the transition that is necessary.
And it was set up in a way that it would reach the low ambition end of their pledge.
I hope this episode helped you understand more about climate change and its different forms around the globe. I'm saying goodbye to you from the newsroom of the COP19, where the conference is about to end. I'm Niels de Kant, and I'll see you soon.